Oh, we're back. No entrance music, no countdown. We just kind of get right into it. It's Friday. Did you think you were going to make it? Are you excited? We did it. They said it couldn't be done. But look at us. Friday. And now we have the show. Now we have a great guest today, Bill Priestley from Freightwaves. A lot of interesting stuff we'll talk about with Bill. But before we get to Bill, let's talk about a couple of other things. First and foremost, I'm having twins soon. Not me specifically, my wife actually, but I'm part of the program. This is the first time in my entire life that I'm preparing for something that I have absolutely no idea what it's going to be like. We put the cribs together, we put a dresser together, we did everything we're supposed to do, and now we just wait. Less than 40 days. I think it's 39 days now. We have a countdown. If we make it to that, I'm going to be very, very excited. As always, thank you for tuning in, for watching this wherever you're watching this, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or other places. If you have any trouble with LinkedIn, I've heard there's been some issues from time to time. Check us out on YouTube. I think it's a little bit more of a consistent streaming experience, but we're all still learning here, aren't we? And look what happened with Elon Musk. Oh, so many people thought he was going to get out of it, but no, he didn't get out of it because he couldn't prove the material adverse change. That's a term of art, a legal term of art, and a business term of art that really kind of boils down to, did something fundamentally change between now and the deal? Was the company you were trying to buy a Ponzi scheme? Were they committing fraud? Was there a zombie apocalypse? What would impact your earnings by 20 or 30%? All that is to say, there was, in fact, no material adverse change, and so the deal will go on. In fact, the deal will go on exactly as it was initially outlined at $54 and change per share. So soon we'll have a different version of Twitter or the same Twitter. I have no idea, but it'll be fun to watch. And again, we all thought there'd be a big epic court battle in October. That doesn't seem to be the case. Now, I'm so excited about my guest today. Bill Priestley is somebody who I have had a chance to get to know a little bit over the last couple of months, maybe even last year. All time seems to blur when you have young children. But what I love about his background is his commitment to helping people understand what they want to be. So he's been in media, he's been in education, and he's got a new project that we're going to talk about called the Dream Job Factory. We will get into that and so much more. And of course, we'll have answers to questions you might be able to pose. So as you're in the comments today, and I see many of you here, I'll put your comments up as we go along. Please ask your questions. We're going to be really excited to talk to somebody who's an industry insider in the business of communication and supply chain. So let's just take a quick moment and say thank you once again to everybody. This version of this program will be made into an audio-only version on Apple Podcast and Spotify. My kids have the day off today. It was parent-teacher conferences, and so we might have screaming and yelling from time to time, but I think we can manage that. So let's get into it now. Oh, my connection's also unstable, so that sounds about right for my own mind as of now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've had enough of the chatter from me. Let's welcome to the program my good friend, Bill Priestley. Bill!
How you doing, sir?
I am doing absolutely phenomenal. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there. We just got done with another Friday edition of Freightwaves now, and I've managed to retreat back to my homestead, and happy to be out here with you.
Thank you, man. So I have been able to be on some roundtables with you over the last couple of months. And finally, we get to turn the table. I get to find out, what is Bill Priestley up to? So tell our audience who doesn't know you, what do you do today and what's your background?
Well, today, right now, I'm a producer for Freightwaves now on Freightwaves TV, and that involves basically doing and writing the rundown for every show every day, scheduling guests, scheduling roundtables, as you mentioned, and then hosting that one segment that we have, which is right now 4 times a week. We have our net zero carbon segment on Tuesdays, so that kind of wipes me out for that particular day. But that and then also kind of helping out with other shows around with content, with producing a little bit. I do a little bit of video editing, and then if you've watched the show, you've seen me also do a couple of segments, one called Mailbag and one called the hot seat, which you got a chance to be on a few weeks ago. And to that end, by the way, I hope not to feel too much heat, but you're the only person, by the way, in that segment that has ever faced the question, best Freightwaves TV personality. So I have not pulled that card on anybody else as yet, but it might come out to maybe this next week or so.
That's how you make enemies, I think, in this business, is picking favorites.
Yeah,
right?
I tried it. I've tried with that hot seat to question number 9. I've always tried to kind of get somewhere that makes them go, okay, like they usually know what the 10th question is because it's always the same.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But that 9th question, if you get through number 9, that means you've got it good. But who knows what number 9 is going to be? So,
well, has anyone asked you that question? Like, what is freight? What is that to you? What is that answer for you?
Oh, no, the last question being freight is blank.
Freight is, but yeah, what is freight to you? To Bill Priestley?
Freight is blank. Okay, so freight is the answer. Freight is the solution to an unsolved problem. Somewhere.
Absolutely.
That's what it is for me. So it's the answer to an unsolved problem. In other words, the something is needed somewhere to fulfill some sort of need to create something else to go, or whether it be food, whether it be diapers, whether it be infrastructure, whatever it is the solution. Freight is always the solution to an unsolved problem.
That's the thing about supply chain. I think a lot of people today, I mean, the audience listening today, the people watching at home, they know how important supply chain is. But before we had the pandemic, what I found is so interesting is like Amazon comes out with delivering things to your house. And we then have this product that is inseparable from how it arrives to your place. Like the experience is the transportation of the good to the place you want it to go. And now everyone's like, yeah, supply chain is incredible, but it's all the things, isn't it? Like there's nothing that doesn't come on a truck.
Right. No, and that's just what it is. It's that thing, that object that needs to be there in order for you to satisfy a certain need, whatever that need is. So it doesn't matter what it is. Like I say, it's always going to arrive on a truck. And although it's starting to arrive via drone now.
Oh, that's right. The future of fleets.
So we actually had Amit Rezev of Flytrex on today, talking about what kind of world the drone has created for us and what kind of world it is becoming as well. Because I think, remember, we all had this dream about everybody has a flying car.
That's right.
Well, you got to have drones before you have cars. And
That's
so
true.
we're worried about that. So if you go outside and you start hearing drones, yeah, that might be irritating. But if you want cars, you got to go through drones.
That's the first step.
So,
well, that's an interesting point you bring up. So like the cost of moving something, the biggest cost tends to be fuel. The second biggest cost tends to be labor. The third kind of is like the asset itself, the truck and the trailer. And then you compete as like maintenance and insurance and all this. So drones, the idea of automation, using robotics to take out some of the cost. And that's, we have Daimler Trucks North America talks about CASE, connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. This is that trend and that force. Do you see drones becoming more pervasive for final mile delivery?
I think you're going to have to expect it, but this is something that we got into in the roundtable as well, is because you have to actually watch. I think there's this genuine fear that if we start really going after drones, they're going to blacken the sky, and it's going to be, because there's going to be niche offerings. For instance, there's a company out now that does drone package delivery to a secure mailbox. So it'll drop a package in a mailbox. It'll automatically lock. Only you can open it to get your package. So you don't have to worry about, your porch pirates that can come in and steal something.
That's right.
You're talking about drones that can be used to for medical reasons, to get to a wreck, or to get, say, for instance, a 3D printed cast to a hospital, and it's the quick and easy way. You don't necessarily have to worry about quote unquote highways and byways, traffic, so on and so forth. And speed is of ultimate concern in those kinds of situations. But to your point, it seems like a lot of what has come out of the United States military is often then reflected afterwards as it starts to
That's
become
right.
mainstream. So you're talking about, say, for instance, in my industry, radio doesn't come prevalent until after World War One. Radio was used widely in World War One by the military. Television, same thing. World War Two becomes basically commonplace after that. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a company called Saberwing that has tested and proven to test a drone that can carry an 829-pound load. And then
Wow.
they have one in production that can carry a 2-ton load.
That's
So
incredible.
this is
That's
stuff that the Army
incredible.
has used to transport things in and out of areas. So look out, that may be coming to a city near you.
See, what I'm hoping for, and maybe I'm wrong in thinking this, like the old bank system where they'd have tubes that you'd put your thing in the tube and it would
Yeah.
come to you. Why can't we just have tubes for every house? Like, do we actually have to have things in the sky? Can't we put it all underground? Or is that completely implausible?
You know, if you'd let Elon Musk know, I bet he might have something to say about that. Of course, he's doing the Boring Company out in Los Angeles,
That's
so
right.
he's basically doing car subways
That's
out
absolutely.
there.
Which
So
I still think, like, why don't you just do a train? Like, I get it makes sense to
mhm.
why he would want it to be cars, but that just seems like a terrible infrastructure decision not to have trains underground.
Yeah, especially when the flying car is coming. So
Okay, so let's talk about what it takes to be a good interviewee. Like, so I love
okay.
to come talk with you. I love to be on programs and talk to people about the business of whatever it is. What do guests need to know about? Like, if you're going to go on something like a Freightwaves or go on a program, what makes a good podcaster or guest in general?
A good guest, believe it or not, will do as much or more prep for an interview than the interviewer will,
Hmm.
because in this particular scenario, you know, you've got the questions. You can prep the questions. You can decide how the interview is going to go. I have to be ready for anything,
That's right.
so I've got to be on my on my best behavior, and all my things have to be in a row in order to be able to come out and say what it is that I want to say on a given point. So, that's why, say for instance, when you watch regular, say for instance, late night talk shows, this is a
Mhm.
great example. Jimmy Kimmel was actually on Howard Stern not too long ago, and he said, like Stern was asking him, like, who's the best guest you ever had?
Yeah.
And the best guests I think we can all agree, hands down, are usually always comedians that
Mhm.
go on shows. I
Improv
mean,
people.
if they don't necessarily, well, but that if unless they have a movie to promote or something like that, but if they're just coming on, they've got bits prepared.
Yeah, that's a good
They
point.
they they already know kind of where things are going. And Kimmel said the best guest he's ever had is Steve Martin. And Steve
Yeah.
Martin's a guy who's been around the block a few times, but he knows the political climate. He knows what's going on. He's going to make jokes, and he's going to write those jokes, and he's going to mention those things. And generally speaking, when you've been on that long, usually the host has a rapport. They know what to expect, and there's some give and take, and they know where everybody is. Usually, in most cases, especially with Freightwaves now, if we are not familiar with the guest, uh, or not really knowing exactly what they wanted to talk about, we'll just say, hey, what do you want to talk about? Give us some
Okay.
talking points. And so then we'll confine the discussion to that area. And
Hmm.
so they know what's coming. They're still the expert. We're not going to ask them something off the wall unless we're actually like pick tonight's baseball game or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. Okay.
But that gives them, they can hone down in on those points and come on and be a competent guest. So you're
Mhm.
doing your work beforehand before you come on, and that's what makes a good guest for any medium, whether it be radio, podcast, television, whatever.
I remember vividly the very first time I ever appeared on Freightwaves. It was about like a hidden talent and hidden musical talent thing. And I had suggested that I can play the didgeridoo. And I,
Hmm.
I can, not particularly well, but I was able to go on and play the didgeridoo. And I got to think that the didgeridoo is the way that I have kind of infiltrated my way into any type of popular culture, because that is the very beginning of my ability to go on a program and talk about anything. And this time it was didgeridoo stuff. But nowadays I talk with you about all sorts of things. We talk
Hmm.
about law. We talk about changing regulatory things. Have you seen a more interest from supply chain folks to understand kind of the laws that are happening and behind the scenes, or has it always been part of that conversation?
I think now, especially more so than in the past, and especially now when you're looking at the way what the pandemic did. to the worldscape, and all of a sudden you have shifting sands all over the place. And one of the issues that I'd love to get into on the show, and we're trying to do a roundtable about this, is what is the state of the 3PL 4PL? Because we haven't really, I mean, we've talked so much about, trucking as an industry. We've talked about owner operators as a part of the industry. We've talked about large carriers as part of the industry, but we haven't really delved into the 3PL, 4PL, like how much have the shifting sands done for them? Because owner operators took a tremendous hit over the course of the pandemic, and large carriers took a tremendous boom through that as well. You're looking at ocean carriers who the rates just went sky high, and
that's right. Consolidation's got to be nice, right? Having that kind of pseudo monopoly power.
So how does these things change? And especially when you talk about the FMCSA, when you're talking about the FMC regulatory issues in terms of shipping, in terms of demurrage and detention charges, and all these kinds of things, and all of a sudden we have the shifting landscape. And of course, last time you were on, we talked about independent contractors, because this is going to be a debate, as John Kingston said on the program. We're not going to figure this out in our lifetime, but and legally. How hard is it to draw that kind of a conclusion and make it stick, especially from administration to administration? So those are the kinds of things that at least I like to talk about on Roundtable, because we may not get to a solution, but we may not be meant to get to a solution there either. And so, but it's always a debate that's fun to have.
What I like about it is you're bringing some level of education and different perspectives to your audience. Because what we all want is an audience that's educated, that understands the topics that are happening. And often is the case, we see some headline grabbing things here and there, but the roundtable gives a chance to kind of dive into a particular issue, and maybe we don't get all of the pieces teased out, but we're able to give an audience the flavor and say, oh, I want to learn more about how, Uber and Lyft spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get themselves out of AB5 with Proposition 22. And it's incredible to see there's an audience that wants to learn more about these things. Are you finding audiences being more curious to learn these types of things?
I'm finding them that they are more appreciative of what we're doing. Not necessarily that, like, we generally don't get topic suggestions from the audience, but we do get, like, I appreciate that was really good stuff that you had on about this topic or that topic. So we're just trying to delve a little bit deeper. For that roundtable, we've got 11 minutes, and it's not long. And it's you've got to delve in, get in, try and get to the crux of the matter quickly, and see what you can do with it. 9 times out of 10, I have 5 or 6 questions I have not asked by the time we get to the end of the interview. So it is very rare that actually happens. But we try to do a deep dive in 11 minutes, which is probably not possible, but we do the best we can.
I think it's a great format, and I love, like, oftentimes after we get done with these Freightwaves Now panels, I'll reach out to those people I've talked with privately and say, hey, let's just grab a cup of coffee and just talk more about this issue, because I just love learning as much as I can about these different things. Now, there is something I want to learn about from you specifically. So the Dream Job Factory, tell me, what is this? What's the vision that you saw, and what is the need that you wanted to meet, and how'd you get this thing going?
I'm going to try and be as quick as I can with this, because this is a long story. So back in 2009, I was teaching at a private school in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I noticed, as many people do, and many people have experienced, the apathy and the disdain that students have for academics, especially when you're teaching 10th grade world history and the Dark Ages is the subject matter, and it's February. So it's cold, it's dark, they don't want to be there. So what I did was I got permission to change the topic of the spring research topic was the genealogy project. And I looked at my students and I thought, they're not in the mood to go researching their families over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 generations. So I got permission to change it to what I called a passion paper. In other words, a research paper on a subject in which you have a great deal of interest, or a passion, if you will. And so that started, actually, that was February. Later on in that year, I had a couple of kids, or a few kids in the classroom that were at that age where they were like, they're sophomores. They're getting the talk from parents about, okay, college is coming up now. We gotta get ready for that. And they're like, I don't want to even think about this. And you see that tense junior year is coming.
Yeah, that's right. That's the year that matters the most.
Yeah. So so like, what am I going to do with my life? And so one of the things I said to them is, well, what's something you're really interested, or no, I said, what is something that, would you want to do something related to your passion paper? And it's like, no, I thought that was fun, but I didn't think that would be like a job.
Hmm.
So I said, well, what's something you're interested in? And one girl said, well, I'm interested in travel. And I said, so what's something that you're really good at? And she said, well, I've been told that I'm good at writing. I said, well, why don't you be a travel writer? And her jaw hit the floor. Like, you can
Yeah.
do that for real?
There's a real job for that?
Seriously? Somebody would pay you to do that?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of that was the catalyst, if you will, to kind of get this entire thing started. But more so for me, because I'm the only person in my family that is not a teacher by trade. I was only a teacher for 2 years. The rest of my family has taught their entire lives. So what happened was, it was, for me, is like, how do you get kids interested in academics? Well, if you give them an idea of a dream job to shoot for, then they can see how their academics can fit in with that particular thing. You can see that every human endeavor, bar none, every human endeavor ever is connected to language, math, history, art, science, and philosophy.
Yeah.
Every single one,
That's a great recipe right there.
from your
Absolutely.
phone to a book to a water bottle to, whatever, everything you can see. Like, say, for instance, let me just grab, I'll just use my phone. You can see, for instance, okay, I've labeled this as a phone, right?
Mhm.
So this is a phone that we've used language, we've labeled it now. You can see the math in it. You can see how long it is, how wide it is. You can obviously understand the science that's involved in here. You can understand the philosophy that's, say, for instance, this versus a flip phone.
Yeah.
And you can see how that's worked out. You can look at the mathematics. You can look at the science. You can look at the history, comparing it to other phones in the past. Obviously, the wired versions versus the non-wired versions,
Yeah.
and see how it fits together culturally. You can apply that to anything, including intangible things like systems of government. They
Yeah.
are all connected to those things as well.
Absolutely.
So, using your education to get to where you want to go, and that's the answer to why do we have to learn all this stuff, which is the obvious question that students ask when they have to go into a math class and learn about the Pythagorean theorem. It's like, this is absolutely pointless.
I'll never use that when I become an adult, but maybe you will. But
Yeah, you will.
that's what
Yeah.
I love about. So I studied political theory. That was the thing that was so interesting to
Mhm.
me. And I got out of undergrad. And it's like, I still don't know what I want to do. So I went in to go delay being an adult for another 3 years by going to law school. But you have found that these ingredients are what's necessary for someone to kind of be motivated for this type of next state in their life. So how does this progress for you? How does this become into this dream job factory?
So, dream job factory is kind of the idea of, like, how do you create a dream job? And so I'll run through the very quick formula that is basically, we have misidentified a dream job or a dream career, if you will.
Yeah.
If I ask you, what do you want to do with your life? Or what do you want to be with when you grow up? We have an English problem. If I ask you, what do you want to do with your life? The answer to that question has to be a verb.
Hmm.
If I ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer to that question has to be a noun.
Yeah.
The real answer to that question is really, what do you want? And it's both. It's both a noun and a verb. Every single job description, not title, description is a combination of a noun and a verb. Football coach, interest in football, ability to coach it. Math teacher, interest in math, ability to teach it. Oncologist, interest in cancer, ability to fix, treat, diagnose.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So we have to consider this not from one perspective, but actually three. So first, you have your interests. You got to figure out what it is. Say, for instance, if I wanted to ask you, what can you talk about for hours on end and not get bored? That's an interest. Okay. That's something that you're intrinsically motivated to talk about, to read about, to research, those kinds of things. Number two, an ability. And this has to reach three different criteria. Number one, you have to be good at it, or at least want to be good at it. Number two, you have to have the desire to do it. And number three, it has to be something that you can do for somebody else. Otherwise, it's not a job.
Yeah.
If you just do it for yourself, there's no
hobby.
value in that. It's a value. Well, yeah, there's no value in that for someone else. Like, I can watch you play, video games, but that doesn't give me any value for watching you. I mean, physically, me watching you actually play video games, not so much that. But you have that. So, figuring out those things, and we as humans are so bad at self-diagnosing what we're good at, because abilities by nature are things that we think are difficult. Like if you see someone do something amazing, you go, wow,
Mm.
that's amazing. They must have a tremendous ability to do that. The person doing the action at that time may think, you know what, this is easy. I can do this. It's like, say
Yeah.
for instance, if I see a problem, A plus B equals, and I answer it C, and C is the answer, it's second nature to me. And if someone else walks up and goes, A plus B equals bananas, and they look at it and go, well, that's hard. He's got an ability to do that, referring to me. And I think, well, that's just second nature. Everybody should be able to do that. So
Mhm.
when we look at abilities, it's hard for us to see what we're good at, because what we do is we do it by nature.
That's
You
right.
don't see it that way. So you often have to ask somebody else
Well,
who can compare you.
yeah, what I'm really enjoying about like this vision you're painting for me is
Mhm.
the success of somebody is a collaborative project. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think when I was in law school, I did a program called Street Law, and I would go to high schools in the
Mhm.
area and educate them on just different topics of the law, things that you don't really get taught, like don't talk to cops, and like why don't you talk to cops? Well, because it never
Right.
helps you, and you kind of explain this to them. But what I find so interesting and compelling here is you're making a collaborative goal for helping people identify what their skill
Right.
sets are and how to go to the next level. And in every industry, relationships really, really matter.
Mhm.
And having people in your corner that are helping you become a better version of yourself, that's phenomenal. So how do you see this program kind of going and evolving over time?
Let me jump and finish
Yeah.
the previous answer real quick, and then I'll answer that one. So you've got three things. Number one, an interest. Number two, an ability. Number three, an audience. You got to do it for somebody. In other words, the math teacher. Are they talking about middle school, high school, college, graduate school? Or are we talking big city, small town? Who is the avatar? What is the avatar of the person that you really, really want to work with?
Mm.
So with that, you have an interest that stimulates you intellectually. You have an ability which drives you physically, and you have a purpose which drives you emotionally or fulfills you emotionally or spiritually. You find a job that has all the three of those things, that's a very hard cocktail to try and get away from. Once you experience, it's like, yes, I absolutely want to do this. Where's this going now?
Yeah,
Is that,
absolutely. Because
so
you're getting close. It seems like we're just about to see this a broader launch of this program. I'd want to kind of understand, like, how are you working with the community now, and where do you see this thing going?
it's just kind of gotten started really. The website is done as of about 12:05 last night.
Fantastic.
So so it's up. But anyway, yeah, so basically we're trying to reach out to people right now that are in a certain they are um perhaps parents of kids that are in that failure to launch. In other
Mhm.
words, they're not they go to school, they graduate, maybe they haven't graduated yet, they don't know what they're doing. They're getting very anxious about that transition from school to work, and they're stuck. And so that's kind of what I'm targeting right now. Not to say that I won't take anybody else on that, but you can go to the website dreamjobfactory.com. We have an ebook that you can that is specialized, three different ebooks, one for high school students, one for college students, one for college athletes as well, because
Mhm.
that can work a little bit differently. An online class is coming in November. And then we also offer group coaching and individual coaching off of that as well. So you've got an opportunity there to go through what is the Dream Job Blueprint, which is a 12 module process. And what I just outlined to you are basically the first three or four modules of that, just glossing over, figure out what your interests are, figure out what your abilities are, matching those, putting those together, and then figuring out what your audiences are with that as well. So that's where it's at right now.
Well, what I love again, like about this idea of like holistically looking at what the kids are interested in, or people are interested in, what they're passionate about, and what they could do for somebody else to, become a career or profession. We talk a lot about in our industry of supply chain retention.
Mhm.
Trucking companies are historic for not having, at least in the last 40 years, let's say, retention rates that other industries would just be completely baffled by, other than maybe retailers, where
Yeah.
you have 70, 80, 90% churn year to year. But if you know what you're passionate about, if you can find the aptitude and you can find the roadmap to get to that place, the sky is the limit. And probably people that like their jobs are less likely to quit, I would imagine, or at least be more productive within the roles that they have.
Yeah, if you look at that, obviously, you have two different types of motivation. You have intrinsic and you have extrinsic. So, if you're looking at an intrinsic motivation issue, say for instance, the person that doesn't want to go to their job, that's an intrinsic motivation to not do something. So that's the reason that the heart attack rate in this country shoots high on Sunday nights, because people don't want to go to work on.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
So if you're in that position, then okay, we're looking at what is it that you don't like about the work. Is it the industry that you're working in, which corresponds to your interest? Is it what you are doing in that industry, or is it who you are working for? And basically, you can kind of do a quick check, like analyze those on a scale from 1 to 10. How much do you like the industry? How much
yeah,
do you like the thing that you're doing? How much do you like the people you're working with, you're working for? The closer you get to 30, perfect. The closer you get to 0, not good.
yeah,
And you can make a judgment call off of that. Then there's extrinsic motivation, which is what are you getting in return for your labor? In other words, your salary, your
yeah,
benefits, your opportunities, as far as those things are concerned. So you can look at that, and this is where you have to make a judgment call for yourself. It's like, all right, do I take this job knowing that it's not as the thing that I want to do, but I need to support a family?
yeah,
Then we're caught in what we call the golden handcuffs, and you
yeah,
have to do that. So that's more important. The reason why I'm concentrating on young people who don't have that problem yet, and can look at this and go, okay, here's what I want to do. Here's the goal that I have, and to make sure they don't get caught in a situation where they're caught in an industry that they really don't want to work in, the thing that they really don't want to do, or the people they really don't want to be around.
yeah,
And that can be tough. So yeah, that's kind of, how people can at least make a dent into their own lives in terms of what's your job satisfaction in this moment, and if and when you need to make a change, because we saw this a lot with the Great Resignation.
yeah.
That's what people did. People looked and said, oh shoot, look at how much money I can make if I just went over here.
That's right.
And then you also have to ask the question, all right, but is the money worth it? One of the things that I've talked about, and I do speaking engagements as well, is that I will have an envelope and it will have a job in it. And I will bring up a student and I will ask them, how much money would it take for you to take this job? You
Mm,
don't know what it is.
yeah.
How much money would it take for you to take? And it gets to like 1 million, 1,500,000, 2 million,
Wow.
3 million, somewhere in there. And they'll open it up and it will be something like, you have to, jump in a cage and swim with great white sharks in
Oh,
the
that's not a
Great
very
Barrier
helpful
Reef.
job. I don't think
No,
OSHA would like that job at
no.
all.
Well, OSHA doesn't matter in Australia.
No,
So,
that's right.
so, what is it? Everybody, they say everybody's got a number.
Yeah.
And that can prove it in that direction. But yeah, that's how you can kind of make a calculated guess as to what your job satisfaction level is. If you look at it from a 3-level standpoint, instead of just saying, do I like my job? Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, you have this new phenomenon of remote workers, right? So
Hmm.
people are now able to do a lot of things from home. So the office camaraderie is not there as much, and so there's, I think, less friction for people kind of going from role to role. I'm guilty of that myself. Do you think it'll ever go back to being, more of this, inside of giant office buildings, or do you think this is a new normal that we're going to be experiencing?
I think that's going to be dependent on industry to industry. Say,
Yeah,
for instance, us at Freightwaves, we're unlike any other industry, at least certainly most of them in Chattanooga, in the fact that we had to we sent everybody home, all the data people, all the
yeah,
sales people, all the marketing people, all of them at home. Those of us in media still had to come to work because the cameras don't go home.
that's right.
So
Those are expensive things to
so
bring home,
yeah,
I would
so
suspect.
we yeah, that's a $25,000 camera pop. So
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, I'm doing
Um,
it cheap then. I'm
I'm
doing
sorry.
cheap
No,
and
no.
cheerful.
Well, no, I'm sorry. That's wrong. Each of the cameras up there is probably, I don't want to say, it's probably in between 3 and 6,000 a piece.
Oh my goodness.
Um, but anyway, so we have to go to work.
Yeah,
We're going to have to go to work no matter if they send everybody home.
that's right.
And that is why you see television people, television anchors, news anchors, they got to go in, and they
Mhm.
are essential to bringing the news to what's going on, because people aren't necessarily out there. And I remember here in Chattanooga during the pandemic, you'd go down Broad Street, the main thoroughfare. If you're coming for F3, you'll see it, just dead as a doornail. I mean,
Wow.
nobody's there. And obviously, it's gotten a whole lot better, and everybody's back out and working. And with the nice weather that we've been having recently, a lot of people are outside and enjoying everything. But yeah, so do I think we're going to head back? I think it's going to be more dependent on the industry.
Yeah.
I've seen people on the internet. I saw one boss that said he called everybody back to work and
Well, they have to make
he
do on the
doesn't
real
regret it.
estate they've invested in, and that's the
True,
thing.
and that's true. But also at the same time, if you can do the job as well or better from, say, for instance, if you're in sales, if you can do the job at or better than what you did in the office,
Absolutely.
stay at
100%.
home,
Yeah.
because that'll still pay the real estate bill. And we've still got a lot of square feet in Freightwaves that is not utilized because everybody's at home, but we're still paying for it.
Well,
And
I'm going to have to briefly, Bill, just very briefly, don't go anywhere. I got
okay.
to kick you off for a really quick special report. So I'll be right back with Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you were upset with me last week. You missed out on something that you should have had, which was a special report from our very special correspondent, Abby Haffenbrettel. And I dropped the ball. It was a big week, a lot of things going on. But because of the relentless demand from everybody, I am happy to welcome back our very special correspondent, Abby Haffenbrettel.
Hello.
Hi, Abby. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing? Oh, is this new?
Oh, the head? Yeah, it's new. It's great. I learned from Trey that I can actually put like a logo thingy there. Oh, well, see, for me, it's in the top right, so it's above your left. I don't know. It's all reversed. Listen, I heard a rumor. I was watching a good friend, Trey Griggs. He was interviewing this incredibly dynamic person about a particular idea. And I think you might be able to help shine some light on this idea.
Well, Matthew, now hear me out.
Okay.
Transportation is hard. It's stressful.
I don't disagree.
We need an opportunity to let loose, maybe show off a couple robot arm dance moves.
I would be down with that.
This dance.
Yeah, that's a thing now, right? The kids are all doing it.
I guess so.
Okay.
And so my idea,
dab, right? Is that what it's called? Dabbing? I have no idea.
No.
I don't know what these things are.
That's dabbing.
Oh, see? Okay. I'm getting better at this at some point. Okay.
So
I'm bought in.
Because I never went, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a transportation prom or freight prom? But maybe that's a better term.
I think this is an intriguing idea. Tell me your vision of this incredible event.
Okay. So obviously you can bring your spouses. This is everyone's invited type of opportunity. We would probably have to charge, but all the proceeds will go to whatever the event costs and then charity. So it's a charity event.
Oh, I like that idea.
Girls wear the ball gowns, a true prom style. We could even do like 80s, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. I'm curious. I'm excited. I find this to be very compelling. Let me noodle on this. So you're envisioning an event where, let's say it's a who's who of people in supply chain and transportation. Is it invite only, open to the public? What's that? How do you gatekeep?
No, definitely invite only.
Oh, do you get to control who gets to invite? Are you in control? Or is there a panel?
I think you and me will need to make an initial list.
Okay. All right. I'm interested. Okay. So we have this event you're talking about, and this would look like a prom style, fantastic. Where would this thing take place?
I don't know. That we would probably need to figure out.
Okay.
It would probably need to be somewhere where other customers are, so it's not just people.
So you can expense it, right?
Yeah, people wouldn't travel just to come to this, so they'd need to like make a trip of it, I would assume.
Like Chicago, maybe Chicago. Nashville's good too. So is Chattanooga, but Chicago seems really compelling. I have an idea, Abby. I have a guest on right now. I'd like to bring him in and see what he thinks about maybe. In fact, what do you think? Do you think we should see what Bill has to say?
Yeah, let's see what Bill has to say.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
We're doing great. Abby, why don't you ask Bill what we're talking about here?
Bill, what are your thoughts on a transportation prom?
I think it's a good idea. Okay,
awesome. So Freightwaves will sponsor. Great. Great news. We'll spread the word.
Let's not put too many words in my mouth because
okay.
No, I think it would be a good idea. There certainly is, I think, an element that would really gravitate towards that kind of an event. I think we could do it really well.
All right.
Fun. We could do a dinner too. We could, do some transportation-y things, like maybe have a speaker, like something like that.
Maybe a large coordinated dance ensemble.
Oh, gosh, we need to do a TikTok dance, like a mob. What is it? That mob dances. What are those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
Flash
flash mob?
Flash mob.
Okay.
Flash mob.
Okay, Abby, I think we have something to noodle on here. I think this is a great idea for anybody who is watching this. Please promote the idea of what are we calling it? A transportation prom, a freight prom, some name, and it'll be absolutely spectacular. What are you thinking? Q2 next year, Q3? I don't know. Is it sooner?
No,
Okay.
probably not sooner.
Is the theme going to be Enchantment of the Sea?
It could
Ooh. See? Now we're talking.
See, Bill's part of okay. So, Bill, you're part of the executive planning committee. You have been voluntold.
Only because I was 11 in 1985 and saw Back to the Future. That's the only reason I brought that up.
All right. Well, Abby, I got to get back to this interview. I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you as always. Tell me, where can people find Abby Haffenbrettel?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Is probably the best spot. Abby Haffenbrettel. I'd guess. Yeah, I didn't put my last name here, but you can find me somehow, some way. HAF. Yeah. There's only one of me in the entire world with my name. So.
Oh, well, fantastic, Abby. Thank you for hopping on. All right, Bill, we're done with Abby. That was a great piece. I think I feel very confident about that. We work really hard here.
Yeah, that may have some strength behind it.
I think we get enough critical mass and it just becomes enough. You speak it into the world and it becomes real. Now, I want to tell you a quick story, and I think you would have something you could bounce off this with me. A couple of years ago, my father and I and my older brother did part of the Appalachian Trail. And so we began on Springer Mountain and we're climbing up it, and we all day long, 9 miles up the hill, we get to the top and the trail runner says, everybody, you gotta go. There's tornado warnings happening. You can't be on top of the mountain. So like, okay, it's dark. We're going to start walking down and find a place to camp. It was a scary night. No tornadoes happened, but that was the experience that I had up in the mountains with bad weather. I have a feeling that you might have had an experience that's worth sharing about something similar.
Just slightly different. Yeah. So this is a 45-minute story. I'm going to try and tell in about a minute. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So in March of 1993, you can Google it. If you remember it, if you were in the Southeast or the Eastern Seaboard, you remember the blizzard of 93. Some call it the superstorm of 93. I was camping in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park during spring break, my senior year of high school. There were 9 of us, 8 students, 1 teacher. The teacher did have Montana backpacking experience. So he kind of knew as things got worse and worse. But basically, we left on a Sunday, started hiking on Monday. Within about 10 minutes, we were out of any kind of radio call or anything. We did not have weather radios. We did not have cell phones, obviously, 1993. Mm-hmm. And on Tuesday of that week, the National Weather Service said, batten down the hatches. There's a huge storm that's going to happen. It's going to happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending on where you were. And it hit us. And it was 50 inches of snow on top of Mount Mitchell, which was within a couple miles of where we were. It got started. I was hiking along a service road on Friday afternoon, about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, somewhere in there, where I saw the first snowflake fall. Had to hike over a ridge to our campsite. Wow. I got to the top of the mountain. There was 1 inch of snow on the ground. When I got to the campsite, there were 3 inches of snow on the ground. I mentioned to a friend of mine who had coaxed me into this trip. I did not sign up for this.
Yeah.
Went to bed that night, got up next morning in my tent, 2.5 feet of snow. And it snowed all day Saturday. We tried to hike back to our van on Saturday, which was supposed to be 8 miles.
Yeah.
I think we made it 3/4 of a mile, had to turn back, went back to the previous campsite, camped out there. Next day, woke up, hardest day of my life physically, going back over that ridge, back to the service road, 3 miles, 2 miles up, 1 mile down, took 6 hours in about 30 inches of snow. And
did you have any hats and gloves and things that would be necessary?
The weather report for the week said we were going to have probably a good chance of rain on Friday.
Oh,
so we were planning for nothing colder than 55 degrees. And it hit -11 without the wind chill. And on top of the mountains, they had registered wind gusts of over 100 miles an hour for a minute.
That's incredible.
The picture, if you go to Wikipedia and look up Superstorm of '93 or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, storm
I
of the
love that.
century is what they call it.
I love that shot because that radar shot of the storm was taken at the exact moment where we were in the worst of it, the absolute worst of it.
That's
so we're right there on the
incredible.
Tennessee North Carolina border. But yeah, so yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I start off, I talk about Dream Job Factory a little bit because when I talk to students, I open up with that story, and I conclude the story with the fact that my grandfather was an Episcopalian priest, and my uncle, who first time he saw me after the ordeal was over and we were back and all of us were safe. Everything, nobody lost any fingernails or we lost fingernails and toenails. Nobody lost any limbs.
Wow.
We did have a couple of people that had to stay at a hospital for frostbite observation, but they were fine.
I'm thinking like Donner
Yeah.
Party stuff, but I'm glad it didn't
Yeah.
result into that.
Yeah. So anyway, my uncle, first time he sees me, he says, "So what are you going to do with your life now?" Thinking that I'd had this, near-death experience and that I was going to go into the priesthood because I understood what death was like, and I stood in front of it face to face and so forth. And in reality, thank goodness for positive attitudes, because I never thought that was a possibility. We never thought that was a possibility. I thought the worst thing that could possibly happen was I was going to go to sleep and wake up in a hospital.
Yeah.
That was it. But I told him, I told my uncle, I still want to be a sports writer.
Yeah.
There was no big change out of that. And
Well, so now, I mean, fast forward, you have had this experience. You want to be a sports writer. You've gotten yourself into supply chain. You're in supply chain now. And now you see how weather can do crazy impacts. We just had the hurricane. Do you think you'll ever get out of supply chain? Because I have never met a single person yet that is able to say, yeah, I'm done with this. Like they say they're done, but then they come back because they can't actually leave it.
It's interesting because there's always a problem to solve. There's always a problem to solve. And so that's one of those things where, if you're looking for a career, if you're looking for a job where, like I said, with Dream Job, when something that stimulates you intellectually, if the problems keep coming, you're going to keep thinking. And that's always a great problem to have in terms of, being awake and alert and knowing that you're going to have to deal with things this morning. Shout out to Kaylee Nix, my host, who does such a wonderful job this morning. And this happens, and I'm not blaming her at all for this because it happens to everybody on crew.
What did you do, Kaylee? What did you do?
She called in sick this morning. And so that involves a pretty large overhaul of the show when that happens, because when she comes in, she is our only registered meteorologist. So we have to drop weather for the entire show. So we have to kill 8 minutes and fill 8 minutes, like
give me a call. I'll fill 8 minutes.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. But that's just something that we have to do at that particular point. But and that's the constant problem that is television and live TV to that effect as well. So we're always looking and trying to solve problems and basically getting our 2 hours on and doing it as best we can.
We're living that now. So Britton was going to be here to talk about robots, but he hasn't have a good cell signal. So Britton Lab unable to make it today. So that's why we had a little bit of improv there. I'm going to bring some comments up now. So folks, if you have questions for Bill, throw them in the chat. If you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, we can see them. If you're on Twitter, I have no idea what you're doing. I can't help you. I can't do it. Grace Sharkey.
That might be a good thing.
Yeah, probably. I don't have many followers on that space, but that's okay. Grace Sharkey. Tell me about Grace Sharkey. Is she amazing? I mean, I've met her in person once before at a panel up in Michigan State, but tell me about Grace Sharkey.
I only have to refer to your answer of who was the best Freightwaves TV personality, because you said Grace and Blythe. And right. And so no, I don't have to add anything to that as well, because Grace is wonderful. Grace comes on, she does a great job. She does a great job with the radio show. She does a great job with her own show with Kaylee. They've got a great guest coming up in the near future. I can't announce who it is, but they landed a large one. Hopefully we can make it stick, but I think that they've done a great job with that. But yeah, she's wonderful.
That's phenomenal. I mean, what I like about the Freightwaves team is you have a lot of dynamic personalities with a lot of different, diverse backgrounds in the supply chain, from brokers and carriers and shippers and everything there. I mean, what is it like running that operation? How big is that media production company?
It's not as big as you might think. If my previous job to Freightwaves was Channel 12, which is the CBS affiliate here in Chattanooga, and our production staff over there is or was over there was slightly bigger than ours. And so granted, yes, we are, you have a few more odds and ends there that have to be maintained. You have a master control, which has to be manned 24/7. That's FCC mandated.
Oh, wow.
You have to have, there are those kinds of things that need to be done. They have their reporters, their anchors, which are a little bit more than ours. And so that's, and Channel 12 is the smallest of the three affiliates in Chattanooga.
Wow.
They do a great job over there. We have other affiliates in Channel 3 and Channel 9, which can double and triple in size in terms of their staff and what they can do. But as far as the overall staff, the overall stuff, we have kind of the same stuff as most small television stations. So we have our engineer, we have your basic kind of what we call the backroom crew. They call themselves the boiler room boys. You know them. You have a switcher, you have a graphics guy, you have an audio person, you have an LTA, or a person that basically schedules guests, gets them on the air. And you've met Isaiah, of course.
Yeah, Isaiah.
Yeah, and then of course we have our EP back there as well, Todd, who's manning things back there, and then you've got basically one person who's running camera out in the studio, and then you have the talent out in front of the cameras, and that's pretty close to it. You have usually two hosts, Kaylee doing weather, Sydney doing news, Isaiah, who does a social roundabout with Christian, and he's back after being on vacation for a little bit, but and then you've got me doing roundtable. And it's not a large group, but it's slightly smaller than what you would see at a small TV station.
So is Freightwaves, is it a media company? Is it a technology company? Is it a mixture of both? What is Freightwaves?
You should label it first as a software company.
Okay.
And then we have this outlet which covers the freight universe as best we possibly can.
I see.
As a way to be a source and to stay in the know. And obviously, the third aspect of it is that we're also, and again, not necessarily defining ourselves as this, but an events company as well. And
Sure.
of course, we talk about future supply chain. We talk about F3 coming up at the beginning of November,
Right.
which we're vigorously planning right now. And then we have about 8, 9, 10 events that are virtual that we do about once a month or so.
Yeah.
So we also do those, and we try to be not necessarily a think tank, but at least something that people can come to as a source to say, all right, where is the freight universe right now? And hopefully our compass is aligned well, and we can point them in the right direction. We got it. Also, I should be remiss if I didn't say we have a ton of great writers that contribute to freightwaves.com.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
that's
I love Clarissa.
that's the
She's
nucleus.
phenomenal.
That's the nucleus of the media, because if there were no writers, there would probably be no shows.
Yeah.
And what they do is phenomenal, and it drives what we do as well.
Well, I wanted to attend F3. I was very excited about this, but then my wife, selfishly, having twins in November, has made it impossible. For
What?
me.
You're not coming?
Good question. I don't think I'm allowed to leave the house. I can go like a 20-mile radius, and then I get like a shock collar I have to install before I leave, just to make sure I'm available. Sure. It's just the nature of the business. Okay, so what has been the most surprising thing for you getting into the world of from sports broadcasting to just broadcasting and teaching, then getting into the world of supply chain? What has anything been like, this is really bizarre, or does it everything for the most make sense for the most part?
Well, I think it's just a timing matter. When I just celebrated my 1 year with Freightwaves last month.
Oh, really?
So,
congratulations.
Yeah. So when I got into Freightwaves, we were pandemic, we were stripped down, staffed, and not only that, but the people that I talked to within the office were like, yeah, we've never seen anything like this. So I got in, and you never knew, like, say, for instance, when things could be fairly predictable back in, say, for instance, the mid 2015s or so, the mid 2010s. And now that's definitely not. So I jumped in at its most chaotic point. And so that was probably the thing that was the most jarring about it was that you never could understand or expect what was going to happen on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Nor could you really predict it that well. So that's what made it immediately fun. And trying to, and not only that, but also it's just, for someone who is outside the supply chain for most of my life, is certainly including except for, say, for instance, in sports, understanding how that works. But getting into this is, like drinking from a fire hose for the first 4 months. And that was, and especially, when it's shooting stuff at you that has never happened before, that was been the most fun part, to try and figure out how is this going to work. So we have to be a little bit more creative in figuring out what we're going to do. Like I said, when we had the show today, we had a show on drones. How are drones shaping the world? And so we're trying to look at, what's going on. I'm really looking forward to, say, for instance, doing a year in review show when we come in December, and have people in and say story of the year and things like that. What has impressed you? What has not impressed you? Because coming off of the pandemic and coming into, obviously, this year where you had volumes sky high at the beginning of the year and then just fall off a cliff. And now we're seeing jobs. That report coming out today. It's a dramatic time to be in freight, not only just, in the economy overall, but especially when you're watching where stuff is going and seeing how healthy the economy is. There are questions all over the place.
It's a dynamic industry. You just wait for 5 minutes and it's changed again. The idea,
it's like they say the weather in Tennessee, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's an industry where everything moves at some level through rail or through a truck or through the boats. And it used to be an industry that was heavily regulated, heavily unionized, and over the last 40 years, it's dramatically changed. And now it's very fragmented, and the operating ratios for so many trucking companies historically have been like 5 or 10%. Like, these are not massively profitable companies. And you have like just this year, someone like Old Dominion busting out a 69% OR, and people are like, holy cow, I didn't know you could make that kind of money in supply chain. And now you see this, I love to see the technology and the interest focusing in this. Now, the question I'm going to ask you, the next one is, I transition very poorly to this question. How has the rise of social influencers changed the way media communicates with people? Because now you can build audiences in very siloed places. Not obviously not me, because my audience is very, very small. But I can imagine for bigger folks that are out there. How does that impact things?
This is a big question that it not only impacts us, but also every single media outlet out there, and anything that believes itself to be a trustworthy source of news. A few years ago, I went to the National Sports Writers Association meetings, and it was at that time that, if you know Linda Cohn of ESPN, she was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame that year, and she did a little roundtable, not roundtable, but she did kind of a Q&A with college students that were in the Winston-Salem area that could come and ask her questions, and one of the things that she talked about was, how would you handle, the question was put beautifully. It was like, how would you handle the O.J. Simpson highway chase as a story in social media, with social media involved? And it was just, the way that they go about, and then say they being, I'm a part of the media as well, and in that respect, is that when you have to talk about influencers, the media has to be very, very careful in terms of where they draw their facts from, because there's always been a standing rule in media that you got to have two sources that say the same thing. That can you can't say one thing that's hearsay.
Yeah.
And you got to have it coming from a second source to verify it in order to say this is legit. And so influencers, can say, for instance, if you're looking at, and again, I'm going to go in the sports industry, but if you say a guy like Mark Schefter, who seemingly has his pulse on just about everything, although allegedly he says that a lot, he does. And so he's kind of a pseudo influencer in that respect.
Yeah.
So do you jump? Obviously he's a great asset for his news gathering techniques, but how do you deal with other people? How do you deal with, say, for instance, somebody who it has his or her fingers on the pulse of a very specific niche?
Yeah.
And they may have some inside information. And so again, you always take that with you have a two source requirement there. But to your point, in terms of like, how do you deal with it overall? It depends on if you want to hire them. That because that's do you want, and by hiring them, that's kind of loosely translated, do you want to use their stuff? And that's where you've really got to be very, very careful in terms of, because who knows exactly what their level of interest is in this. And of course you can do as many interviews as you want to, but when the camera's on and it's live and we can't stop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that's something that you got to be awfully careful of. I think more and more what's going on, and what Linda said, is that number one, you got to use two sources. Mm-hmm. So you have to be sure of that there as well. But when it comes to things like, say, for instance, commentary. So if you have an opinion about something,
that's the secret sauce, right?
Yeah. If you have an opinion about something that maybe, for instance, nobody else has ever said, then all of a sudden, hey, you're kind of like the guy in the back of the room, or the girl in the back of the room that puts their hand up and says, hey, this isn't right. And so that has to be taken into consideration as well. And you don't have to have a second source on that as well, but you can do your investigation.
Absolutely.
But that's where, because more and the flip side of that, not Linda didn't mention this, but I will, is that if you have a situation where you're dealing with an influencer, you need to be able to understand that the power of their answers, the power of their statements, their tweets, whatever it is, will carry weight no matter what you say.
Yeah.
And so, that's where you also have to be very careful as well, and knowing that the effect of what they will say will still happen because they're going to say it because they have the ability to say it.
Everyone gets a platform now,
as much as everyone has a platform. Therefore, who's believable?
Yeah.
Who is so again, that comes back to, two sources on facts. If you're going to state somebody's opinion, good luck. We don't do it very much. Very much.
Absolutely.
But if it comes, especially, say, for instance, if it comes from Craig, absolutely. If he's got something to say that he wants it out there, and sometimes he doesn't need to tweet it. Sometimes he'll just knock on the door and say, hey, can I come on?
Yeah, there you go.
And,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so there, you can do it that way too. But
Bill, I could talk to you about like the machinations of media all day. There's things I didn't even get to talk to you about, like clauses and contracts for personalities that are on television programs, about like what they're allowed to say outside of being on air. There's a whole bunch of other things, but I hope
that's a kettle of worms right there.
I know. And I wanted to get there. I was like, what, that might be a little too in the weeds. Where can people find more about you, what you do, and where can they find more about the Dream Job Factory?
You can find me on LinkedIn. And I'll just throw this little pitch out there. If you're interested in being on Freightwaves, just send me a message on LinkedIn. You can do that.
You hear that, people? You hear that?
If you go back in the archives and look for Kevin Hill, Put the Coffee Down. I did 2 episodes with him on how to get on a show and how to be a good guest. Basically, a little bit of this of what we've been talking about here. And I wholeheartedly endorse, if you want to contact us and you want to talk about something, that's great. If you want to come on to the show and talk about your product, I'm sorry. I'm and I look to always increase my level of contacts in terms of, if we're talking about X and such issue and you've already contacted me in the past and saying I can talk about this or something's closely related to it, I may give you a call, like I do Matt from time to time.
That's right.
And
check those emails at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
Check those. Because things can happen. And do you think you think this job is 2 or 3 hours? It's not. Being the producer of a show is not. I'm working all day just to make sure, do I have the best guests? Do I have the best content? Do I have diverse content? And all that stuff as well. So if something drops, and I've got openings on Monday, people.
Bill, I also recommend people follow you on Twitter. Are you on TikTok? Are you doing that one yet?
I'm on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram. I believe all three of those are Dream Job Factory handles. Okay. Awesome. As far as that's concerned. But if you're really interested in Freightwaves, hit me up on LinkedIn, and that's where you can go there. And of course, dreamjobfactory.com.
So don't go anywhere. I'm going to say a little outro to the people, and then I'll like to talk to you just for a minute. So I'm going to kick you off. Don't go anywhere. All right, everybody. Look we did it. We did it. They said it couldn't be done. The Friday is finally wrapping up, at least for me and this show. There's more stuff to come, obviously. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing it and talking about it and giving us the positive feedback that lets us change the way we do things. I had some people reach out to me and say, Matt, that tree looks kind of weird. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I moved it. It's still here. It's not gone. I didn't move it out of the office. I still want the tree in the office. I just don't need it to be in every single scene. So as always, have a great rest of your day. And then what I do is I hit the end broadcast button, then it ends. You'll find this recording on Apple Podcast and Spotify within the next probably 2 hours. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician or a video technology guy, but I can download the audio only. As always, have a great weekend. And thanks again for tuning in to another one of our conversations, and then end broadcast. So the end broadcast is